Bleach is back and better than ever, and with Jujutsu Kaisen airing this season, it's got some real competition. But how well does it hold up to its manga counterpart? Let's dive right in. And oh yeah, if you haven't seen the latest episode of Bleach the 1000-Year Blood War, then spoilers ahead. The following episode is titled The Last 9 Days, and it adapted the rest of chapter 542, which is 2 pages, and then 543 to 546. It's time for Yuha to attack the Soul Society once more. But before that, Ishida joins his ranks and names him the successor. And if I sound a bit tame or weird throughout this video, it's because I'm still recovering and my voice isn't back to its former glory as yet. So let's see what's been adapted or what's been given an exclusive ticket to the Soul Society. The episode starts out with Inception. Literally, there are sperm or semen or whatever you call it in your country. But basically, we are getting a crash course on the development of a baby. I really like how ominous this scene is. At first, you weren't sure about what you were looking at, but then you realize it's Yuha. He absorbed the souls of a lot of people to be alive, including that of his own mother, which sadly we don't get a view of what she looks like. In truth, this particular story was told in the manga, but a bit closer to the end of the 1000-Year Blood War. So instead of spoiling it, I'll leave you anime onlys to speculate. Let me know in the comments below what you think it means. At any rate, this is where the episode would start and you would get its intro. By the way, if you wanted to know my thoughts on the intro, I'm not really a fan of it, but I'll rewatch it from time to time to see if it grows on me. But for now, we can move on. Once the episode resumes, we get an anime exclusive scene of Ichigo following Ichibe to the next training site. But Ichigo isn't so hot on how the Zero Squad allowed the Soul Society to be attacked, so he wants to head back, but Ichibe lets him know, you're too weak right now, so let's continue training. Buff up them muscles for the fight to come, and you bet your orange hair it's coming. Funny enough, this decision to stay is what causes what's to come on the horizon, and when it happens, I'll let you know. I won't be spoiling anything. The manga readers know what I mean when it comes to Ichigo returning to the Soul Society when he did. Finally, we dive into content of the manga with chapter 542 titled The Blade Is Me, which ends with these 2 pages that were skipped from the last core. This shows the meeting of the Sternritter. We do skip these 2 panels, one of which showing the Sternritters actually raising their cross when Yuha comes on the screen. Now he gives us a pretty good anime exclusive opening speech. I mean, it's no Independence Day, but it can do. When he says he has an announcement for them, this is where the chapter would end. Chapter 543, Letters, begins with Yuha introducing Uryu, fresh as hell. We skip this panel. This new member shocks everyone. I mean, none of them except Emo Boy and a few others has been on the same level as Yuha. We skip this panel, but now he announces Uryu as his successor, which shocks the Sternritters. It's here that we get some major deviations from the manga, so follow carefully. In the manga, when Yuha announces that Ishida would be his successor, and no one would believe what he said, including Baz B, the Flame Alchemist, he wasn't having any of it, but Emo Boy number 2 stops him from raising his voice too much. But in the anime, once Yuha had announced Ishida as his successor, the Sternritters starts questioning, and Baz B wonders why Jugo wasn't named the successor. But no outburst from Baz B in this version, which means that we would skip this entire page and a few other panels, in total 8 panels. Proceeding this, Yuha hints about Ishida's power before he leaves, and we get another deviation from the manga. You see, in the anime, Bambietta, when she leaves, would ask the soldier to join her in her room, as she wants to blow off some steam. Poor guy was so happy he didn't even know what was coming. I bet he thinks he's about to score. But in the manga, this would have been seen in the following chapter, 544. This would be where she splits him in 2 after what I assume to be coitus. At least he died happy. But this isn't out of the ordinary for our little Bambi, as according to the other Sternritter that now enter her room. We get to meet some of the other Sternritters, and I'll go slow because I'll butcher every one of their names. Sternritter G, Lilito Lampard, letter P, Mianis Macallan, T, Candice Catnip, and Z, Giselle Gwelly. The anime shortened this scene a lot, so we don't get the introductions of each of them, and neither do we get the rest of this sequence, but I'll still cover what happened. They start lecturing little Bambi, but in the commotion, they start fighting amongst themselves until little Bambi puts a stop to it and gives the architects some new work by putting a hole through the wall. She is also worried about the Sternritters. Seems the news of Ishida taking over didn't go over well with her either, so this would mean the anime would skip out 10 panels. When we check up on Baz B to see how he's doing, we skip these 3 panels. A lot of skipping around, huh? The manga reintroduces us to the Sternritters we already know and a few others, but I'll reintroduce them as well. Ritter S is masked, Ritter K is BG9, Ritter I is Chang, and Ritter H is Baz. But to be fair, since they weren't reintroduced, I'll just count these panels as missing, including these, which brings the count up to 12. Baz is pissed, so he tries to head out only to run into Jugo. Let's skip Jugo's introduction panel. He asks Baz where he's going, but Baz starts questioning Jugo, saying that he was under the impression that he would be Yuha's successor. But Jugo couldn't care less, so Baz decides to snuff him out. So right on time, he gets stopped by another Stern Ritter, Askin. We do skip these panels. We then move over to Ishida in his Majesty room. Seems he's almost complete with the ritual to awaken his true avatar, Quincy powers. The conversation here is a bit mixed around in the anime as opposed to the manga, but things pretty much follow the same path. One thing to note is that the anime mixes the last pages of the chapter with the first pages of the next chapter, 544 for this conversation. All he has to do is to drink the vial of blood. His Majesty assigns the designation of letter A to Ishida, which ironically enough is the same letter as His Majesty himself. We do get this really impressive anime exclusive shot of Ishida standing in a graveyard. And did you notice the look in Ishida's eyes? He seems very unimpressed. This would be the end of the chapter and the midpoint of the episode. Chapter 544, titled Walking with the Watchers, would have started out with Ishida and the Quincy King talking about him joining and why he survived, in which case he would have swallowed the Quincy King's blood and decided to join up. After that, we would have checked on Bambietta, who split the guy in two at this point. All of this would have already happened in the episode. Now, there's another part of this manga chapter which I believe the episode completely skipped out as well. And the only reason you hear me covering most of the skipped content is because more than likely the anime won't cover it at all, not even in flashback. So here's what happened. We move over to Jugo entering a very dark room with a woman there. I don't know who this is. She starts questioning His Majesty's decisions too and wonders if Jugo won't step in. But he reaffirms his position to stick with His Majesty's decision with no question. He thinks that His Majesty's plan from the get-go is to create unrest. And is it just me, or is this man reaching? In the end, this would be another 17 panel skip. Let's check in with our gang. Orihime, Chad, and the guys link up with Urahara in Hueco Mundo, who is still analyzing some data. Now I won't bullshit you here, there's a bunch of skipped panels. In all, there would be 12. For this section though, I won't be covering exactly what happened, as it's pretty much the same as you see in the anime, except for the few notable differences of Orihime mentioning Chad instead of Ichigo. Anyways, it seems that Urahara has come up with a solution, but we won't know that until a few chapters in. This is where the chapter would end. We get an anime exclusive scene of Ichigo training with Ishibe as he progresses very nicely with this beautifully lit hallway. We then check on the Captain Commander, and have you noticed the theme of this episode as yet? It's called Character Whiplash. It zips and dances all over the place, trying to find its footing. When we get into the next scene, hey, it's Shinji, and it realigns with the manga. Only this is chapter 545, titled Blue Stripes, on page 13, mind you. And trust me when I say this isn't about to end with we jumping all over the place like crazy on this chapter. Shinji is ordering Hiyori to help out with the distortion caused by the Quincy, and she enlists the help of the other visors. She seems a little too happy to join in once she hears Mayuri's name, doesn't she? Now with that over, it's time for us to jump back to page 3 to Rukia and Renji doing some training of their own for the fight to come. But this training is very unorthodox, especially for Renji, who can't stand it. We skip these 4 panels explaining that the training is to get their bodies used to the atmosphere here, which is like Goku training on Snake Way or with Master King Kai. I don't know why I said Master there. In the middle of their discussion, Rukia would get a call telling her that Byakuya is finally healed. We do get a quick look at him, and he seems a little less like himself, believing that he is too weak. So I guess it's time for him to also do some training. Going back to Renji, we now have some skipped content, approximately 8 panels. This would be an hilarious moment of when Renji and Rukia were to take some measurements and to remove everything. And when I mean everything, I mean everything, which is quite embarrassing, Rukia says. But then comes busting in Ichibe, and this would be where the anime syncs up with the manga. He is very impressed as at first they couldn't stand here, much less walk. Now they're arguing, showing that they're ready to train inside. This is actually where the manga would switch over to Shinji ordering Hiyori around, but this scene was switched up, so instead we skip over to Ichigo's friends who haven't seen him in a while. They are worried about Ichigo as per usual, as they're always relegated to the sidelines. Tatsuki isn't too concerned, but then they are approached by the Captain Commander. He's here to let them know that it's time to say goodbye to Ichigo, and it shows their shocked faces. But before we would find out more, this is where the chapter would end. One thing thing I didn't mention is that we didn't get to see the beginning of this chapter, which starts out with the Kurosaki residence with Yuzu preparing some food for the family. She's also worried about Ichigo, and when will he return from his so-called training camp? So that would be about 12 panels skipped out. Chapter 546, titled The Last 9 Days, begins with Keigo not believing the captain commander that they would have to say goodbye to Ichigo. We skip out this panel of him trying to be the traditional Keigo and be a funny goofball. But the captain commander is dead serious, letting them know that Ichigo is fighting to protect the Soul Society. And the main reason would be they don't know what kind of power Ichigo will return with and how it will affect the world of the living. So he might not be permitted to return, even if he survives the upcoming battle. This sparks Keigo into a fit of rage, draping the captain. But the captain commander is just telling them the truth, as he wants to include them in all of this and not leave them in the dark. So he leaves them with soul tickets, allowing them to enter the Soul Society to see him if all goes well. And he lets them know, hey, don't worry, it's a far ways away from now and it might not even happen. It's a just in case. We then check on Orihime and Chad, as it seems that they're taking a break from their training or something else. In this case, she doesn't want to stop, she wants to continue. She's glad she's helping out with Mundo, even if she can't be on the front line, so why stop now? We switch over to the Soul Society. Something is happening. The Soul Society is being eaten away by a shadow, which it reveals His Majesty and troops underneath. Instantaneously, the Serete vanishes, and it is replaced by the hideout of the Quincy. His Majesty takes time to quiz Ishida on the legend of the Quincy King, and in this case he goes into adding something else, saying that the world will end in 9 days. This is where the chapter will end, and funny enough, this is the only chapter that I see things move straight forward, and it didn't go all over the place, skipping from page to page. But this is also where the anime would end. Oh my god, that was horrific when it came on to the anime matching the manga, and I pretty much glassed over minute details throughout the entire video. Looks like most of the chapters that were adapted only adapted half of the material. At any rate, it was a pretty good episode, and the OP reminded me of the earlier days of Bleach. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't my cup of tea for an OP song. The visuals were pretty solid as usual, but it seems JJK takes it for this anime season for the first episodes anyways. But this episode for me pretty much gets a 7 out of 10. So let's get to the numbers. Bleach, the 1000-Year Blood War, episode 13, titled The Last 9 Days, covered roughly 5 manga chapters. More or less, but if you count up the pages, it probably only adapted 2.5 chapters. Each chapter would have an average of 14 pages. All the pages would add up to 71. Each of these would have an average of 80 panels on those pages, adding up to 322, with 100 of those being unique or not adapted. This means that only 222 panels were adapted, meaning out of all 5 chapters, at our lowest percentage ever, 68.95 were converted. Holy crap! The Discord is live, so you can join the Discord if you haven't been getting notifications, because YouTube tends to do that to my channel for some reason. And let's grow the community even more with more shit takes of Demon Slayer or some other anime that everyone cares about or no one cares about. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this episode, and leave me a like on your way out. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. It really helps the channel. I've been your host, Kyle. Thanks again for joining. Peace out. Stay safe out there, Felicia.